MTC. EBS 4 Exercise 1. If ethics is a dynamic, changing form of activity, then ethics is not a set of rules to be followed blindly or defended dogmatically. In many cases, there will be legitimate debate as to whether and how rules should apply. Even principles we hold dear may have to be reinterpreted in light of new developments. For example, how to apply the principle of respect for life to the issue of how long to keep a dying person alive through new technology. Moreover, the boundaries of ethics shift. In our time, ethics has come to include such issues as animal welfare and protecting the environment. Ethics is not just the disposition to adhere to rules but also the disposition to critique and improve the rules. There is an important difference between living one's ethics, as an activity, and simply following a set of rules. The former rejects the sheer acceptance of rules and conventions. Ethics requires that we follow rules that we have examined critically. MTC. Good job. Let's start. MTC. EBS 4 Exercise 2. When compared to people using search engines, as recent studies show, those who seek news and information from social media are at a higher risk of becoming trapped in a collective social bubble where news is shared within communities of like-minded individuals. In these bubbles of filtered information, people choose to consume material that reinforces their existing attitudes. Even when opposing views appear side by side, people still select from content that upholds opinions they already agree with. The internal logic of social media platforms themselves reinforces their users' safe choices by offering them a narrower spectrum of sources. In this way, online collaboration amplifies the echo chambers and further insulates the filter bubbles. For better or for worse, the process of discovery undergoes a transformation, from an individual to a social endeavor. MTC. Good job. Let's start. MTC. EBS 4 Exercise 3. Laboratory research is generally preferred to field research. The reason is simple and has to do with what a laboratory is. We tend to think of a laboratory as a room with gray or black furniture, no curtains on the windows, tile floors, and workers dressed in white coats. Certainly we are describing one type of laboratory, but the description has nothing to do with the essentials of research. Basically, a scientific laboratory is a place set up to allow the most appropriate control over variables of interest in the particular research. Thus, a social psychology laboratory might well have rugs on the floor, curtains on the windows, pictures on the walls, and comfortable chairs like any living room. Laboratory work in social psychology requires control over elements such as choice of participants, beginning and end of social interaction, and freedom from distraction. If someone's home or a storefront building meets these requirements, such a setting might be a better preparation and serve just as well or better than a sterile-looking room. The results of laboratory research depend entirely on the composition of participants in the control groups. MTC. Good job. Let's start. MTC. EBS 4 Exercise 4. Huge amounts of evidence support the view that the conscious self is, in fact, a very small portion of the mind's activity. Perception, abstract cognition, emotional processes, memory, and social interaction all appear to proceed to a great extent without the involvement of consciousness. Most of the mind is non-conscious. These out-of-awareness processes do not appear to be in opposition to consciousness or to anything else. They create the foundation for the mind in social interactions, internal processing, and even conscious awareness itself. Non-conscious processing influences our behaviors, feelings, and thoughts. Non-conscious processes impinge on our conscious minds. We experience sudden intrusions of elaborated thought processes, as in aha experiences, or emotional reactions, as in crying before we are aware that we are experiencing a sense of sadness. So we can say that for the most part, the self is not divided by some line between a conscious and a non-conscious self. Rather, the self is created by non-conscious processes, as well as by the selective associations of these processes into something we call consciousness. To put it another way, we are much, much more than our conscious processes. MTC. Good job. Let's start. MTC. EBS 4 Exercise 5. Motivated reasoning is a strong element in the distrust of science. It has been revealed that there is a statistical correlation between believing in an unregulated market economy and skepticism toward climate research and the reality of anthropogenic climate changes. A study offers the explanation that the claim of CO2 emissions being a real and big threat is itself a threat to the market economy that depends massively on fossil fuels. The principle seems to be that it is better to distrust the reliability of the climate research than to revise views of the market. The tendency to resist facts is so clear that people's ability to solve math tasks is impaired if the result is not to their liking. Motivated reasoning must go deep if it even affects the capacity to calculate. Better to get facts and even calculation rules out of the way than to change your point of view and allow facts to disturb your convictions, political identity, and perception of reality. Why would one want to allow that if one is so convinced of being right? MTC. Good job. Let's start. MTC. EBS 4 Exercise 6. Aristotle conceived of democracy as a ruling partnership among relative equals. The ancient approach was to look for one, all-purpose epistemic virtue for the political domain. We lack a word in our vocabulary that picks out a distinctive political expertise, a technique for modem democracy. This is no accident. The model of an agency relationship gets its purchase from its ability to divide up cognitive labor to permit knowledge specialization by political actors. You could spend all your life informing yourself about any given subdomain of the modem bureaucratic state. To avoid this overload, democratic citizens take out periodic loans. They transfer their decision-making authority to agents who bear their decisional costs, by contracting out some of their obligations. This drastically reduces the political reasoning that they must engage in on a daily basis. The freedom that this form of agency offers should not be downplayed. MTC. Good job. Let's start. MTC. EBS 4 Exercise 7. When teachers and caregivers use child-appropriate language and examples, young children can be easily drawn into discussions of fairness and difference, learning to be open-minded and accepting of others. What better way to engage the issue of fairness and difference than with the incorporation of the world's musical cultures? Through music instruction that contextualizes and humanizes musicking, young children come to know others and what makes them special, or even similar. An example might come in the form of a discussion of the musical gender roles in traditional Andean musical cultures. Men traditionally play the instruments, e.g., various flutes, while women serve as singers and lyricists. Many children exclaim, "That's not fair." In response to acquiring this knowledge, the skillful music teacher must help them understand that the culture enjoys the higher-pitched sound of the women's voices, and, as the men cannot sing in that way, they play instruments that mimic that register. What might not seem fair at first glance can be illuminated by a bit of context. MTC. Good job. Let's start. MTC. EBS 4 Exercise 8. One example of a stimulus releaser can be found in the behavior of the herring gull chick. Parent gulls, noted for their scavenging, return to the nest and disgorge food for the benefit of the chick. The bill of the herring gull is yellowish in color, but it also contains a bright red spot on the lower mandible. As the parent's bill opens, the chick pecks in the direction of the red spot and receives the food. The actions of the parents and the chick are thus coordinated in feeding. The chick normally pecks at the parent's bill, but it may also be induced to peck at models constructed to resemble, in different degrees, the bill of the parent. Chicks direct pecks towards the models, although they barely resemble the parent's bill in physical appearance, if the model has a red spot situated on it at a convenient pecking position. In the absence of the spot, pecking may not occur, although the model closely resembles the parent's bill in other respects. Clearly, the red spot acts as the trigger for the pecking response. MTC. Good job. Let's start. MTC. EBS 4 Exercise 9. Critically, regarding AI, our prospective fate is less about the threat of an evil Terminator robot army and more about the fact that AI has no inherent reason to share human goals. For now, it neither loves us nor hates us, but there are signs that our smart tech may soon understand us better than we understand ourselves. It will most likely become smarter than we are, and soon. So unless we design it in alignment with our highest aspirations, the priorities of thinking machines may be totally alien to us. AI will be motivated by its own logic rather than human concerns, from love to compassion to peace. Even if we manage to design AI that shares our most precious values and install within it an algorithmic sense of virtue, there is no guarantee that, as it becomes more independent, it won't abandon those ideals. MTC. Good job. Let's start. MTC. EBS 4 Exercise 10. Perhaps owing to their negative program, many people have developed the habit of interpreting things as right that should naturally displease them. This enables them to avoid the unpleasant negative feelings, and to seemingly only experience joy. So-called positive thinking, which has been a real trend of late, is based on this principle: creating an excess of joy is the key to a happy life. Unfortunately, this strategy often results in living in an illusory world. If carried to an extreme, it leads to the denial, reinterpretation, or repression of anything that would naturally displease us. Smile at any price and do not look at the shadowy side of things is a strategy that might create pleasure in the short term, but in the long term it will create the disease of discontent. All of us are confronted with things in our lives that require an interpretation other than "this is beautiful" and "this is right." To deny this means to deny the nature of duality and of life itself. 23p52 Exercise 11. It is important to remember that movies are not always topical. When we start looking for easy analogies to current events in movies, we miss what the movies are saying. Making a movie takes a lot of time, and the hot topics of today likely weren't the hot topics of the day when the movie was written, financed, and filmed. For example, when Pixar's Wall was released in theaters in 2008, many people saw it as blatant propaganda for the environmental movement. 2008 Pixar Wall-E. After all, Wall-E's story centers around saving the planet from overpollution via a tiny plant growing in a work boot. An Inconvenient Truth had recently won the Oscar for Best Documentary in 2007, and the environment was a consistent issue in the 2008 presidential election. Wall, An Inconvenient Truth 2007, 2008. However, writer/director Andrew Stanton first conceived of the movie including the fact that the Earth is covered in garbage and that our robot hero finds a single living plant in 1999, long before the current environmental movement was winning Oscars and being debated by presidential candidates. Andrew Stanton, 1999. MTC. Good job. Let's start. MTC. EBS 4 Exercise 12. The artifact status of certain emotions was famously proposed by William James and Carl Lange roughly a century ago. 1 William James Carl Lange. In an often quoted passage, James argued that fear was evoked by the act of trembling, sorrow was evoked by the act of crying, and so on. James. This James Lange theory of emotion has a checkered history. James Lange. Some important research supports the theory. One example is found in a simple experiment carried out by Fritz Strack and his colleagues where participants were asked to hold a pencil in their mouth. Fritz Strack. In one condition, participants held the pencil using their teeth without allowing their lips to touch the pencil. In a contrasting condition, participants held the pencil with their lips only. Strack showed that the manner by which participants hold the pencil has a direct effect on how they feel. Strack. Grasping a pencil between your teeth causes you to feel happier than grasping it with your lips. The difference can be traced to the flexing of the zygomatic muscles. Holding a pencil between your teeth produces something very similar to smiling. It is not just that you smile when happy, you can feel happy because you smile. MTC. Good job.